This is Adam Sawyer with Qlik Support, and I'm going to be presenting today, as Troy mentioned, as we talk about the essentials of QlikSense multi-cloud. So I'm a technical support engineer here in the Raleigh, North Carolina office for a little over a year. I work primarily with QlikSense in the areas of infrastructure and integrations. I work a good bit with cases around systems performance, authentication, and then triaging other functionalities. I also like steak dinners and long walks on the beach, but nobody asked that. So I guess we'll get started then. So looking at our agenda for today, just a basic overview of what we're going to be talking about. So first, we're going to introduce you to QlikSense multi-cloud. Then we will have a technical overview of some of the required components. Next, a live demonstration of multi-cloud working on my local machine. We're going to provide some next steps and some additional resources if you want to learn more about the underlying technologies necessary to run QlikSense Enterprise for Elastic. And finally, we're going to get to some broad overview of what's to come. So the first question that we have to ask is, what is QlikSense multi-cloud? QlikSense multi-cloud is a moniker that umbrellas a variety of products, solutions, and technologies that are meant to expand the functionality and reach of QlikSense. And it represents the future of QlikSense's strategy, or Qlik's strategy for cloud analytics at pace that is right for your organization and goals, thus providing you the choice for where your analytics live, in what kind of environments, and at what scale you'd like. So the first part of this strategy is something that we should all be familiar with, and that's QlikSense Enterprise for Windows. It's the same deployed and on-premise or cloud-installed product we all use. With the June 2018 and September 2018 releases, this is the basis of the cloud deployments and is a required component as you will use the new multi-cloud setup console to set up the connection between the cloud installation and your current applications. Next, we have QlikSense for Elastic. So QlikSense for Elastic refers to the QlikSense Enterprise deployed on cloud-native containers in your chosen hosted managed cloud provider. So whether that be Azure or Amazon, your own internal infrastructure, this is a new deployed package designed to run large-scale QlikSense enterprise deployments. With the current iterations, it is only possible to consume and interact with apps in Qlik Elastic, and this is the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today. Then finally, we have Qlik Cloud Services. So this is another way to consume and interact with the apps that you own, much in the same way that Qlik Elastic would, but in a public cloud environment hosted and managed by Qlik that is elastic, highly scalable, globally available, and always up to date with the latest features. QCS is separate from our current QlikSense Cloud for Business offering, but that'll be for later in the presentation. So with that, the next slide is a visual representation of what this multi-cloud strategy looks like and how things are currently laid out. So you're starting with a QlikSense for Windows, as you can see. With current builds of the product, you are primarily using both Qlik Elastic and eventually Qlik Cloud Services as places to distribute your apps based on set applications and analytics distribution rules. And so these are the same security rules engine that we currently use in QlikSense. It's just a different set of policies that apply to these resources. So QlikSense Cloud and QlikSense Enterprise for Elastic. So just a few things. QlikSense Elastic is not QlikSense for Linux. It runs off any container-based, solution, in including on Linux guest OS. This is the same microservices that are running QlikSense currently, just deployed via container technologies to any cloud-based OS. However, it's not meant to be run in its current form in isolation on Linux. There are a number of advantages to this approach. One of the advantages of this approach is that container technologies do not require full guest operating systems like virtualization technologies do, and this has the possibility to reduce operational overhead. One of the other advantages it provides is regional flexibility, as apps published to the platform all count on as one license as it's associated with the QlikSense Enterprise for Windows. So that means that there are a number of use cases that could show up here. So just moving to the next slide. Some of the use cases are expanding into cloud resources for scale consumption to large user bases. One of the other available advantages is that as you scale out to consumption to large user bases, those large user bases can be geographically diverse. One of the other advantages, or one of the other use cases rather, is that you can develop your apps within your trusted Windows environment that you're already using and then consume those in a cloud that you're creating. Finally, with policy-driven content distribution, you will have control of how your apps are interacted with these cloud resources. So with all that sort of said, let's get to the reason why you joined today's call. So we're all excited about this new technology stack and what it represents. These technologies represent cutting-edge stacks and tools from the open source community and various cloud services that we all want to take advantage of for expanding the reach of our analytics. So as we talk about this, let's talk about some high-level prerequisites for QlikSense Enterprise for Elastic, right? First, as I've said previously, you do need QlikSense Enterprise for Windows in its current iteration. This is where you're going to be getting a lot of the logic. This is where you're going to be developing your apps. This is where you will configure and, be licensing users. The second thing you need is a cloud provider capable of running containers or orchestration. So that can be AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, but it has to be a place, publicly or privately, where you can run these technologies in a way that we expect. And then finally, the high-level prerequisite is an IDP capable of OIDC and SAML. So OIDC is OpenID Connect. It's a form of OAuth, and then SAML. Some of the vendors capable of this are Auth0, Ping Federate. I'm going to be just showing off Auth0 today in the live demonstration, but you should see that in the test configuration that I have. So the sort of next question from a high level that we want to try to answer is, why containers? And when you ask that, what you really have to do is explain what is a container. Whether you're talking about Linux containers or Docker containers, this image demonstrates the biggest difference between containers and virtual machines, a technology we're probably all used to. While a virtual machine uses a hypervisor to extract, multiple servers on a single server, right? Containers are an abstraction at the application layer, where only the prerequisite software needed is bundled into the container. These containers will run as distinct but concurrent processes in a user space. They'll have their own mounts, and they are interchangeable, and they become, commoditized within a given infrastructure, right? As companies have moved into the cloud, containers and other sort of cloud-native technologies have proven efficiencies with regard to the usage, including, the ability to scale the overall deployment quickly. in a way that doesn't necessarily depend on physical resources. Additionally, as software deployments can have requisite parts bundled with it, you're increasingly automating with scripts the deployment, updating, maintenance of applications. This automation becomes your documentation for the environment as well. So this is what people refer to as infrastructure as code, right? Finally, container software can be run on multiple OS platforms and services with minimal consideration on the basis of that abstraction that's happening at the application layer, right? It's mostly dependent on, how that vendor is expecting to interact with the container layer, and then you're good to go with the same apps that you're running on your local machine or even running on your scaled production environments. So as containers allow us to bundle up software together with its minimum requirements, orchestration tools like Kubernetes allow us to bundle multiple applications together to represent a complete deployment, right? Because one application stack doesn't make a deployment usually, right? And it allows for redundancy and numerous other benefits, including, production-ready platforms for administration, minimizing the amount of time updating a particular product or installation. This is just a simplified image that explains what the Kubernetes cluster with Qlik Enterprise for Elastic looks like and some of the communication patterns. That is traffic. That's actually the name of the reverse proxy that is bundled in the current install that I have. I'm a bad speller, but I'm not that bad of a speller. And so just so you guys know, and then you see where there's a kubectl communication that's going around and is talking to these various applications and resources. And we'll get more into that as I show you guys the demo. So finally, as just kind of a high-level overview, how will authentication work between these two resources, Qlik Enterprise for Elastic and Qlik Enterprise for Windows? As I mentioned earlier, there are two different schemes that need to be supported currently with your IDP. The first is SAML and the second is OIDC or OpenID Connect. So generally to start, just as a basic, you need to have a data source. You need to have a place where users live. This can be AD, this can be a database. With Qlik Enterprise for Elastic and Qlik Cloud Services, as I've said, what you'll need is to get these users out of this user source and into Qlik Enterprise for Windows. This can be using the user directory connector. This can be using Flatfires or other connectors that we use here. And then as you're putting these into the IDP, you're also making sure that Qlik Enterprise can integrate with the IDP via SAML, and that the Qlik Enterprise for Elastic can integrate with the IDP through OIDC. Obviously, SAML is something that is a target for Qlik Enterprise for Elastic because that's used everywhere, but right now this is the current requirement. You can see where the workflow is that users are being brought into Qlik Enterprise for Windows through this IDP, and that those are integrating together, right? So with that, let's go ahead and start the demo part of this. So first thing, you'll see a graphic here about the environment that I'm going to be using today. So you can see that I've got a Qlik Enterprise for Windows installed on a VM called QMI QS Madrid. And you can see that I have an Elastic installation called Qlik Enterprise for Elastic, or elastic.example, rather. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take you into the sort of resources I'm going to be using. So here is sort of a connection to that Elastic image. And then we can also see where I've got a, here it is, there we go. I've got an open VM with the Qlik Management Console and the multi-cloud setup console here. And then I've also got some tabs open to some of the other web-based resources that I'm going to be using today. So we have my Auth0 installation. We've got the Kubernetes dashboard where I'll be showing off some things. We've got the new hub that is bundled with Qlik Sense for Elastic. And then finally, we've got just another user logged into the hub here. Let me just go ahead and log in really quick. All right, so just to sort of start, let's go back to the SSH session. So here is where I actually have Qlik Sense for Elastic installed. You can see where, there we go. So you can see where I have this, where you can see all of the various, they're called pods in Kubernetes. These actually represent different containers with various configured application stacks, right? With this, you know, I'm using a tool called MultiCube. It's a way of putting Kubernetes on your local install. This is probably what you'll use when you're first starting out with Kubernetes, but there are other operational tools that you can use, like Cobb's or Google's own operations tools. That'll allow you to interact with Kubernetes and the containers that those contain. So you can query all kinds of information, including the deployments you have, and then you can also see all of this, right? And so with this, this is great. CLI allows you to do a lot, but one of the great things about Kubernetes is that it comes with a dashboard that just provides you all of this information at a glance. This is what I use a lot for mine, so you can see the same nodes, volumes that we were seeing before, and you can see the deployments just as I had them listed before, along with some of their metadata. The other thing that you can see in this is you can actually see the YAML file that I used to create the connection to the IDP in Qlik Sense for Elastic. So let's just go here. Let me do it really quick. Okay. We'll get the one named screen share. There we go. And so this is it. This is how I configured my IDP. Obviously, everything minus the client secret. Gotta love that. But so continuing on, this is maybe a little bit more bare bones. Let's actually take a look at what we're getting when we get, Elastic up and running, right? So here is the QMC that I know that we're all familiar with. You can see that there are users that have the Auth0 user directory where I've configured SAML to come in and bring in these users. You can see that I have apps where they've been published to streams. But what's in addition to Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows right now is this screen. You can get to it by going to API MSC. It's just a screen that provides just a quick tool to the things that you would need to set up Elastic, right? So you can look at license information. You can get to a how-to with IDPs and what's needed to set those up. But and you can see users and a link to the QMC as well. But the biggest screen is this screen where I'm actually pointing my Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows to a deployment that I've set up. So it has OAuth information, it has where it's going to end up, and it has the deployment name, right? So I'm not going to get into all of how you set that up. A lot of that has already been set up. But what I am going to show is just how it works with this new hub, right? So here's the new hub. I'm actually already logged in. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go here and go to Elastic. Hold on. There we go. So it's going to send me to OAuth. I'm actually going to log in as a new user, assuming that I can get the password right. Of course I can't. Let me try it one more time. There you go, log in. And now I'm to the new Elastic example as a new user, right? So if I wanted to publish an app to this new user, what I would need to do is let's go back to the QMC really quick. So one of the biggest things in how these talk to each other, let me bring that up. There we go. One of the biggest things of how these talk to each other is you're actually just using the same sort of custom properties that you would use in other utilizations, maybe for your security rules or getting your getting things set up how you want. With Elastic, there are actually 3 specific custom properties that I'm using and applying to my applications, right? So the first is collections. So what collections represent is, it can be the equivalent of, a custom property or a stream. This is, going to be the sales collection or the marketing collection. So when I go to the new hub, this is going to be the corresponding group that is associated with, and you can set security rules based around those permissions, right? The next custom property is groups with access, right? So this is actually the group that corresponds with information within the IDP that I've actually set up before. So as a user comes in with OIDC, they've actually been set to have certain groups that are associated with this. I can't show you that in the IDP, but then the next is send to. So as we expand the ability for multiple deployments and other things, you're going to want to send this to certain particular cloud resources. Mine is listed under local, right? And so you can actually set this. And you can actually set this at the application layer, right? So let's go to this new app that I have. And you can see where these custom properties have already sort of been applied to it because they've been added with the application tag. I'm going to make it a part of marketing. I'm going to set the everyone group to have access. And then I'm going to send it to my local. So I'm going to apply that to this app. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to publish this to, and I think I may have already published this to the new stream. So it was, let me just see if I've published this yet. I think I did. Yeah, okay, I did. So now what I can do is as this new user, I'm just going to refresh my screen after going back here. Yep. So let's just go ahead and refresh my screen. And sometimes it takes it a second. But what you'll see eventually is the same thing that this administrator sees, where a certain application has been added here into the hub for cloud. Now I don't have any visualizations in here. Oh, I do for this one. Awesome. I thought I set this up, but I couldn't remember. But you can see where this has been added. The administrator has access. They can click and see all of the functionality that you would normally be able to see when you're consuming apps. If I want to get rid of it, then what I want to do is I just want to go and remove it from the published stream. And so that can be done by removing the custom properties. It'll still show up as just like, hey, you recently went to this, but I won't be able to get it anymore. So let me go here. Let me go to the app. Let me go to this new app and remove this. Now, while it will show a cached view just in my screen, let me just go back out. You can see where it's a little empty here. And it's just that easy. Adding and removing those custom properties once you have a configured distribution rule is the biggest part. So let's just show you this down here. You can see the distribution policies where I have that local needs to be sent to that other image. And you can see it's the same security rules that you're already used to. The subject value name matches the QSEFE I have as set in deployments. The custom variable is the one that, or the custom property is the one that tells me to go there. So that's the end of the demo. That's in short how this will work. So that kind of brings us to, what's next? How do you get Qlik Sense Elastic, right? Well, the first thing you have to do is really evaluate, is this the right product for you? In its current iteration, do you have need for, global, large-scale app deployments, right? Or do you have need for, a lot of anonymous users to see and consume a particular app, but then have like a small number of developers? And that can be, built around app size, that can be built around performance and all of those things, right? The second thing you would need to do is actually reach out to your account manager and have a conversation. There'll be a pre-flight check. They'll talk to you about your use case and what Qlik Sense Enterprise for Elastic can provide it. Then you'll need to engage with consulting services to help you set it up and to configure it so that you get the most out of it, right? And then finally, you get to just enjoy the multi-cloud solutions and the expansions therein, right? The question then becomes, well, what's on the horizon for Qlik Sense Enterprise for Elastic? So right now, you can scale apps, you can consume apps at scale, but the future holds a lot of really, really bright things. And I think that what we're going to see is this really grow as just a differentiator and as a great tool for Qlik clients. So finally, if you're interested, if you don't know where to start, if you've never used any of these cloud tools or technologies, this is just a kind of takeaway sheet for you. There's some Docker documentation. The Docker documentation is actually really, really good. There are some free environments and training that you can get from these vendors. And then finally is just some cheap paid training. If you go on Udemy, you can find these usually at a discount. And it's what a lot of the staff here in support have used to get up to speed on these technologies. So with that, are there any questions? So I'm going to start with this one. What is the relationship between a container, users, apps? Is it one container per user, one container per app, etc.? So the relationship between those is really a container is just a namespace for a process, right? So if you have a reverse proxy and like a Qlik engine and some sort of like content distribution and a MongoDB database, all of those are going to be in their own separate containers, right? So a container doesn't correspond with a particular set of users or an application. Those are things that exist within the applications that are being contained, for lack of a better word, in those containers, right? So it's more about the requisite components being tied to a container than it is about particular elements within Qlik that correspond to a container. So you'll have a container for MongoDB, you'll have a container for Redis, for metrics, you'll have a container for the Qlik engine, you'll have a container for session management, and those are all maintained and held by the orchestration layer Kubernetes. So if you need to scale up your Qlik engines, while there may be processes and things that you need to write into the YAML file, you could do that by increasing the number of those that you want to put out and then licensing those. If you wanted to have an extra database or what have you, and I can't necessarily name the specific changes that you would need to make, but that's how it would correspond. So it's more about application components and applications themselves than it is about users or anything that we would know from Qlik Sense. So another question I have here is, does it require separate licensing, or are these capabilities available in QS September 2018? So it does require a conversation with your account manager, and that would unlock the ability to use this in the current builds of Qlik since June or September 2018. Oh, wow, questions are coming in really fast. Let me look at a couple more of these. So one of the questions I get is, how do you download YAML files from, and then it's got some. So these YAML files aren't publicly available. Typically, when you're setting up an environment, you're setting it up with things. So let me just go back to that really quick, and I can show you why this wouldn't really be helpful for you. So when you're setting up an environment, you're setting it up with specific things in your environment. And this is why, a conversation with consulting can be so important, is because there is a lot of configuration that goes on with setting up Elastic, right? It is, you've got to think about who your provider is, you've got to think about who your IDP is, you have to think about the various resources that you're unlocking. So we're not just going to give you, the YAML files I used for this presentation, because those actually wouldn't do you any good. You would need to, go through the process I mentioned so that you can unlock the most for your organization. Yes, we will absolutely provide the Docker links afterwards. I just had somebody ask that. And then I think, if someone's asked, can you please explain how does an in-memory engine work in containers? Is the data cached? So the question is, the engine works the exact same way the engine always works. Because these are processes that have been, they've been put into a namespace and given like a particular meta reference by whatever container technology you're using. It's just a process. It's running the exact same way. It's still consuming memory the exact same way. It's very, very similar to if you used our new product, Qlik Core, in a container. It's going to work the same way. The difference is the corresponding pieces to get the hub, to get session management, to get a metrics database, whereas Qlik Core just represents the engine itself, taking and using requests more for a development purpose, right? And so one of the questions I got, this is actually a really good one, isn't a container effectively just an allocation of memory and CPU? Did I miss something? Effectively, yes. It's just a process being named in such a way and being understood by a containerization, set or an orchestration tool to apply certain principles or configurations to that installed application. I will say that it is the installed application. So like if you go and you install Nginx, you're getting Nginx on the top of that, whatever solution or layer that you provide, because it is an abstraction on the application layer, not on necessarily the hardware layer. So it's not technically true because, the guest OS is still the one maintaining that. You're just creating a namespace for that application, right? So one of the things it says is, what about data refreshes? How do you do those over multi-cloud? Well, in its current iteration, you would do data refreshes in Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows, right? It's still the same Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows that you always have. It still has the scheduler service. It still has access to all of those data sources, right? And then what you're doing is you're basically making that application available to this other entity, Qlik Sense Elastic, right?
Okay, we've got time for one more question, Adam.
All righty then. Let me look and see. I think so the last question I'll answer is, what if we have separate QS environments in EU and Chaya? Right now we copy scripts, moving apps back and forth. Will multi-cloud put this one solution instead of two? I think that multi-cloud has a great opportunity for use cases like that, where you want to have a single place where people are consuming apps. The difference is, though, you may still have two different, builds of Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows. As I showed you guys on the what's to come slide, one of the things that we would hopefully be is multi-deployments, right? And whether that's multiple deployments of Qlik Sense Enterprise for Windows, whether that's multiple deployments of Qlik Sense Enterprise for Elastic, that would be something I would definitely look for in the future. So, all right, I think that was the last one.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you to Adam for presenting. We always appreciate getting experts like Adam to share with us. We have a legal disclaimer for you, but most of all, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.